I'm going to get really real with you in this video. I want to communicate two things. First of all, I want to tell you about some of the incredible challenges that I've been through. And then I really want to focus on communicating the things that have helped me to get through them. So as many of you would know, for years I have dealt with a chronic illness, Lyme disease, which completely turned my world upside down. It's led to incredible restriction, isolation, loss. So many of the things that I took for granted just taken from me, and just so much normality that I had just completely gone. And I've dealt with this for a long time. It's been a painful journey. It's been a frustrating journey, and it's a journey that I continue to walk. On top of that, 15 months ago, I experienced a brain injury from protracted withdrawals from a medication that I never should have been put on in the first place. And I cannot even explain the sheer torment and horror and overwhelm that happened in my brain, and the effects that some of them are still continuing today that I'm dealing with. It was as if my brain was ripped apart, that my brain was not my own. I couldn't even imagine such things could happen. And dealing with the chronic illness and the restrictions and the isolation and not being able to do a whole lot of things on top of having to deal with that mental side of things at the same time was just horrific. Things have certainly improved in both areas, but I'm still dealing with a lot. I'll probably talk about some of those things more in upcoming videos individually, but what I want to say now is this, is that despite unimaginable suffering that I struggle to put into words and communicate with you, despite all of the emotions and the ups and downs, the frustrations, the disappointments, all of that, the persistence, there is a peace and a joy in the deepest part of me that comes from God. And I could not even imagine that I could experience that in the midst of the things that I've gone through. Maybe you're going through some completely overwhelming things in your life right now, and you need something to help, some perspective to get you through. I want to communicate 3 things that have helped me to get through day to day, all of this that I've gone through. The first thing is this. The first thing is to recognize that my life is not my own. To recognize that I can do God's will, and the greatest desire of my heart is to do God's will, regardless of what I'm going through. This might look different for different people, and the truth that we can all do God's will and do it completely pleasing to Him in a way that glorifies Him, no matter what we're going through, no matter what restrictions we have, is something that I take great heart from. Even if I'm laying there in bed resting, I can be glorifying God for doing the right things, for resting my body. I can be praising Him with my mind. I can be grateful for the things that I do have. So recognizing that I have a purpose even in the midst of complete overwhelm, when things are not how I want them to be, they're the opposite of how I want them to be, I can still live out God's purpose. And that's my main focus. And in that, I can take great comfort. The second thing is this. The second thing is that God's grace is sufficient for me. When Paul's talking about the thorn in the flesh in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, he said that God told him that he wasn't going to remove the thorn, but His grace was sufficient for him. And Paul actually rejoiced in his suffering because he said that God's strength was made perfect in his weakness. It doesn't mean that we have to enjoy our suffering. We won't enjoy our suffering, but it means that we can rejoice in knowing that we can rest in God's grace and that God's grace is enough for us. And I tell you what, if I was to look at the journey ahead, or if I was to be told what I was going to be going through, it would be so overwhelming. But day to day, God gives us enough grace. And I'm so grateful. He says, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. He gives us enough grace for today to get through what we need to get through today, and we can keep our eyes on Him, not tomorrow. I love the quote from Corrie ten Boom, which is something like, worry doesn't rob tomorrow of its sorrows, it robs today of its strength. And it's so true. And I can rest in God, and He will help me get through today. And that's all I need to worry about. And the third thing is this, is that the suffering will end at some point. A day is coming when the suffering will end. One of my favourite passages ever, and I've quoted it so many times on these channels, is 2 Corinthians 4, 16 to 18. For this light momentary affliction is preparing an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison, as we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, the things that are unseen are eternal. And I recognise that no matter how heavy things are, and Paul says the affliction, the light affliction, his afflictions weren't light. He says earlier in that book that he was burdened beyond what he can bear. But what he's saying that is in comparison to the glory, this is all light. Not because our afflictions are light, but because the glory is so great. And we can know that in the end, things will be okay. Things will be better than okay. Things will be perfect. And this all gives me great comfort. It all gives me great strength. I know, number one, that I have a purpose that I can live out no matter what I'm going through. My purpose hasn't stopped because of what I'm going through. Number two, God's grace will get me through each day. And number three, in the end, I will enter into a joy that is unspeakable. And all of this will be long gone and forgotten and taken care of. That's the mindset that I have, and that's the thing that gets me through. Now, it doesn't take away all of my frustrations. It doesn't take away all of my disappointments. It doesn't take away the difficulty day to day when I'm dealing with the mental things or the physical things. But what it does do is it gives me a rest. It gives me a foundation that I can build my life upon. It gives me a perspective that I know that I can keep going and persisting, because the suffering is not all that there is. And I can encounter God in the midst of whatever I'm going through. And it is a day-to-day journey. So friend, I don't know what you're going through. Maybe you needed to hear this message today. And sometimes we can hear these truths, but as we meditate on them and as we take hold of them and as we begin to live them out, they become more real to us. They become more powerful to us. And God is in the midst of it, giving us the grace that we need to persevere and the perspective that we need to persevere. Leave your comments below. Talk to you soon. God bless you, friends.